Thank you. Hi guys. So yeah, it's me, Daphne. Good morning or afternoon now. Jeez. So what I wanted to do last time with my first kind of chat on foliage, I felt like we did a good job going over kind of like the broad spectrum of foliage and how to create it and how you might start to approach different types of plants and painting them. But I thought it would be kind of a cool idea to kind of go through my process as I would approach a plant. Um, Starting to paint it in Photoshop and then put it together in Maya. And if we have time, we'll hopefully be able to see how it'll look in Unreal. So first off, obviously, starting in Photoshop or your 2D drawing program of choice. As I said last time, all of the kind of techniques of painting can kind of be recreated across any sort of app like this. Though, if you use it, you probably know that already. Today, I thought it would be a cool idea. I'm gonna grab my little Pinterest board and drag it over here. So for this specific tutorial, I kind of want to focus on making a fantasy flower based off of real life reference. That's a technique that I've kind of been doing lately that I really kind of enjoy. So it's not necessarily me recreating a flower one for one, but kind of taking reference from a couple shots of like the same type of flower or maybe some different flowers that kind of look similar and just kind of seeing where my hand takes me and what I particularly like. So today we're going to be kind of focusing on a flower that kind of has the shape language of this little guy right here, but has some like green little like leaves stemming from it, and then some little maybe pink little guys that just kind of hang around there and whatnot. So we'll get into how I make something like that. So I'm going to kind of put this aside for my own reference. You should always have your own reference when creating said flower. And then I'm going to start with a 512 by 512 canvas, because that's kind of as big as I'm going to need it. So first off, let me zoom in a bit here. First off, I like to go with like a cool gray background, because for me, that's how, I don't know, that's just how I see all of my colors better. And the first thing I'm going to do is kind of block out the base for all of the plant parts that I need. So for this particular plant, I know I'm going to need a primary leaf, which is going to be, let me drag my reference out again. It's going to be for like the big little flower dude like this guy, yeah. I'm just going to need one of those, one for the small little dude, a stem, which is probably, in this instance, I'm going to just create a gradient, and then I'm going to need some sort of green leaf. So basically, about 4 different elements to create what I want to make. Oh, you don't see the... Do you see this? Dang. Okay. Well, I thought I shared... Well, then hang on, let me bring in a screenshot. I thought I shared my screen. For some reason, it's like, no, only Photoshop. Here, let me drag in the actual photo. 1 second. Thank you for calling that out. Bang. Do you see these guys? Cool. Probably a good idea just to keep it here anyway, just for my own reference, even though I have it on another screen. So yeah, we're going to be basically, we're going to want here. We want the big leaf of, oh geez, my flow is low. Okay. Big leaf of this guy, small leaf of that guy. And then kind of like a green leaf like this. I want to make it a little bigger though, and then obviously a stem. That's what we're basically going to be making. Those are all the different sort of parts. Actually hide. So first off, we'll probably get the easiest thing out of the way, and that would be the stem. Though before we do that, I kind of want to narrow down the sort of color palette I'm going to go for. So I'm going to go for like a warmish, I think, yeah, a warmish pink. And we'll make this, yeah, my palette layer. Oop. And then these are just the colors that I'll use to kind of create the flower and things like that. I already kind of got a palette in mind, but if you don't, you can, well, there's a lot of color palette websites out there that I recommend. I'll probably drop some in the chat later that I use a lot. Or you can be inspired from IRL reference, which is really handy dandy. Okay. So now that we have that palette, I'm going to lock that, so I'm not going to touch it. Let's make the stem first, which is the easiest part of this because I just use gradients. So let's see, let's go something like, and I just kind of put them to the edge of the canvas. They don't really need to be huge or anything. They don't need to take up a lot of space. And let's see. So with this particular plant, I want it to be like a dark green. It's going to start with like greener leaves at the bottom, right? And then kind of blossom into that like magenta peach pink flower that I want. So I'm going to need this green, which I'll probably add a darker green for the bottom so that it's not just kind of one green. Get that magenta. And then we'll probably go a touch of this. So with that, you kind of have your quote unquote stem. I use my geometry to kind of shape my stems more than an actual alpha, just because it is actually geo. It's usually, well, I'll show you in Maya, but like a 3 or 4-sided cylinder to make that kind of stem shape, and that's what we'll use for when we make our UVs and stuff. So from there, now we get into the more fun part, making actual leaves and whatnot. So I'm going to block out my shapes first. And I like to use the lasso tool just because, and for me in particular, I find that to be just more of a precise, I guess, just a little shape doodad rather than drawing it out. And then I'll make kind of like edits to the shape. Maybe I want it to kind of look like, have like a break or something like that. I think that'd be kind of cool. I kind of just adjust it as I go to kind of make it as straight as it can be, because when it comes to UVs, the straighter you get something, the easier it's going to be for you. And I'll kind of plop it right there. And then, okay. So now I'm going to want let's make the larger petal. I'm actually going to put this into folders. Make it easier for myself, because I use a lot of layers once I actually get to start painting. Take a look at my reference. Okay, cool. I'm going to kind of make a leaf with like a pillowy effect. I think. Or, let's see. This is kind of like the part where I try to figure out what shape I actually want my leaf to be. I think, yeah, we'll do something a bit more. That's roughly what I want, so I'll fill that in. And then I know I wanted a smaller leaf that was kind of similar, so I'll make that real quick too. Probably make it a little bit bigger, just because we have so much room. But you don't want it to be too close to everything else. It's gonna make it a pain. So yeah, I'll probably actually move it. Okay, cool. So now we got our shapes. So I'm gonna start with the green leaf here. And the first thing that I do is I kind of select kind of just everything and then create a new layer. And the first thing I'm going to do is kind of add a gradient to it. Yeah, get some variance in there. And then I think I'll paint with a darker color first. Yeah. Make another layer. This is a very non-destructive process as long as you sort of remember to make new layers. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than just painting it all in one layer. So now I'm going to go into my brush settings, and I'm actually going to I don't really use many fancy brushes. So I'm going to bring my hardness down to 0 for just the default brush, basically soft round. And we're going to bring my flow to probably like 2%, something like that. From here, let's see, it's probably zoomed in a bit. Go in and start to paint. Just get kind of like a dark outline. Not being too harsh. And if you feel like you are, you can bring flow down to 1%, or even adjust the color that you're painting with. Once we've made a gradient, the more down the gradient you go, you're going to want to darken the actual color you're using. Otherwise, it's not really going to want to show up. And then sometimes, as I discussed last time, I'll add a bit of Gaussian blur. Kind of even everything out. I'm actually going to go in and paint a stem because I think that's kind of cool. Not a stem, it's the little, it's technically the stem, I guess. And I'm going to lock that and put a gradient on that too. And I'm going to go back in and kind of like, that is not what I want because I got to change my brush settings. And I'm going to go back in and basically make a dark outline. I also apologize if you hear my cat screaming in the background. He is very needy. He wants your attention. And mine as well, apparently. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go in with a highlight color. And that's going to kind of go in like the middle. Because basically what we do when we hand paint is, you know, in any kind of drawing form is you're manipulating highlights and shadows to kind of uh, create the illusion of 3D space. We're basically trying to make these leaves look more voluminous than they actually are. I like to do kind of like a, I wouldn't say messy, but like strokey look to my particular style of hand painting. But if you don't really like that, I would just go in with a blur and you can kind of see make it more smooth. But I kind of like this sort of strokiness. Okay. Actually, I'm going to keep the select. One thing I also like to do is make a little, let's actually crank this back. As you can see, I kind of go between the back and forth between those two settings or adjusting the hardness and whatnot. So what I want to do here is kind of make like a darker side to my leaf and a lighter side. Let's do this. And then the thing I like to do, which I showed last time, is kind of like a mega highlight across the leaf, which always looks really, really fun. Going to change, let's see, and make it blur. So cool, we kind of have our little leaf. Well, one thing I wanted to do actually was add a touch of color to the end of the leaf because I really like how that looks. One easy way to do that is to make a gradient like this, go in and change it to color. It's kind of like a, I don't know, an easy way to add that. I'd go back in and touch this up and make the highlights kind of match, but that's one way to go about it. Let's leave it like that for now. Okay, cool. So now we're going to move on to the petals. Select this space. And then it's basically it's a very similar process of just like highlights and shadows, but the first thing I'm going to do is kind of make some little lines. Particular flower I want to make has like these little line guys. And they kind of add a bit of like texture. You can call it that. And I'll start with the gradients again. This particular one, I'm going to do one from both sides at first. And sometimes I go in and I kind of change the blending mode because sometimes it looks kind of cool like this. Kind of gives me that contrast I was looking for, but then I'm going to want to touch it up. Because what I'm trying to do is get the little lines we made to blend so that they're not as out there in your face. And then we're going to go back in and touch that up. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go in. Let me mouse opacity. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I don't really like to touch opacity, just because it's more streaky. It's more like, what's the word? It doesn't really blend like flow does to me. Though, I mean, most people use more fancier brushes, so maybe there is a use for opacity that I don't know about. I mostly use it on the actual layer itself to kind of bring an effect up or down, because maybe I used it too much or too little. And I'm going to go in and kind of uh, paint out the little dudes that we made, kind of blend them in a bit, but I'm going to lessen my color when I do that. Trying to work and get them to blend in to the shape rather than stand out, because there's like a really fine line I find in hand painting stuff, foliage especially, before something just becomes like way too much. I'm actually going to lessen this bit. Yeah. And now I'm gonna go in like with a little dab of a highlight. Bit obvious right now, but we're gonna blend it out a little bit. Going back to Gaussian blur. And then for finishing touch, we'll do that big mega highlight thing. Okay, cool. So for the sake of time, I think I'm actually going to take the big petal and kind of copy and paste it because it's basically the same thing that I wanted for the small petal, but I'm going to make some adjustments. So it's kind of a good opportunity to show you how I kind of uh, sort of will make the adjustment of one quote unquote asset that I've made so that it fulfills a separate purpose. So for now, I'm actually going to see. Let me just save this real quick. All right, now I'm going to go through and kind of merge everything down. Don't need, so I'll get rid of it. Pull these out of their folders because I don't need them anymore. Copy and paste this petal. And let's see. Now thinking back on it, what I kind of wanted originally is a big like peaches pink flower and then more magenta one. So this is something I run into a lot. It's like, oh, I painted this and it's like a harmony of colors, but it's not necessarily what I wanted. So beside this, we're gonna go back and kind of color just this guy, which really simple. It's just kind of like adjusting some sliders on different settings. Sometimes it's messing with adding like a full color in another layer on top and messing with the blend modes. Sometimes it's just under adjustments. There we go. That's kind of what I want. Cool. Yeah, it's more peachy. And then we got this guy. It's almost exactly what I wanted, but I'd say it's a bit too pink. So let's make it a bit, yeah, like that's cool. All right, so then we're gonna switch it around. I don't know why it isn't locking, but it's okay. There we go, cool. So we have our little sheet here. Fun times. So now that we've got everything, at this point you definitely would save. I'm actually going to first save a copy. 1 second, drag this. Okay. Save this PNG. These are on caps. Okay. The base color then we're going to do is merge all this stuff down. Oh geez, there's another window. Yes, I want the large file size. For some reason, all the windows pull up on my desktop monitor, not my Wacom, which is a little annoying. Okay, so we're gonna move these, merge these guys down, ignore the palette, we don't need it. We're gonna change this to black because we're making our alpha dude. And then block these guys, bring it to white. And then just paint them all in. Cool. We export that. over here. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna hop into Maya. Get that open real quick. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm figuring. I'm just waiting for it to load. Okay, here we go. Not sure what screen it was gonna pop up on. Okay, cool, cool. Let's see. So let's see. Stop that and share this screen. Actually see if it'll let me. Here we go. This should be better. This should share the actual screen. Okay, do you see Maya? Is Maya there? Okay, cool, cool. Oh, all right. My UV editor. I don't want that yet. File. All right. Let me actually. I don't think I'll need any of that, so I think we're okay. Okay. So we got Maya here. Fun times. First thing I'm gonna do is actually drag out a plane. I don't want the grid. Get no subdivisions. And we're going to assign Lambert. Then right click, hold down, go to material attributes to go to that Lambert you made. Cool. Let's name this flower guy. Be consistent. Cool. And go back to attributes again to make sure it's on it. Click this little dude. It's going to bring up this little guy. And then for some reason it shows it off screen. Why? Where? Oh, here we go. Desktop. Here we go. So let's bring diffuse. That's what we want. Cool. Almost there. So then you go to material again. Actually forgot I need this to be standard surface because I use Lambert half the time. Go back in, grab your dude. Go back to material attributes, go to geometry, opacity. Let's see. Okay. And then we're going to go to render, click on the square next to viewpoint 2.0. We're going to change object sorting to alpha cut. Close that. Cool. So now we actually see that the alpha that we made is actually working. Things be see-through. Fun times. And okay, so that's all good. So don't think we're gonna have enough time to actually import this into Unreal today. I want to do a part 3, so we'll do it next time. But I can at least show you how I shape flowers because I kind of like in my last video, we kind of went through like a slideshow about how to do it. So I think it's very important to actually show, there's one thing between a video and then just kind of seeing an image and my rough explanation of how to do it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is kind of like cut out these little guys using this tool. Not really going to worry about Geo for a second. It's going to hurt your eyes, but that's okay. Don't worry about the n-gons right now. We're going to fix that. I'm gonna duplicate this 3 times. And basically just get all my little petal pieces so that they are separate little guys. And double check that verts are okay and everything. Okay, cool. Sometimes when you cut things out the way that I do, you can accidentally have like a stray vert, which is necessarily a good thing, as you guys would know. Okay. Gonna kind of get everything right here. Okay, cool. So I'm actually gonna start, I think, first with the stem, because I kind of, when it comes to me making flowers, I kind of like to start from the bottom up. So what I'll first, not a cube, actually. Yeah, we'll get a cube. And I'm going to basically turn this into a little triangular cylinder guy. Kind of even it out a little bit. The reason why it's a triangular cylinder guy and not a full-on cylinder is because, well, one, if you're doing like a more wow, low poly hand painted art style, I mean, there's just not a lot of geo going on. And then two, the particular shading model that I use has your normal standing straight up, and so to the naked eye, it really doesn't look like a little triangular cylinder guy. It just kind of looks like a stem because light is playing tricks on you. So I'm gonna subdivide this out a little bit more. I'm gonna kind of like roughly make shape that I want to make this little dude. Cool. Then we're gonna go. Oh, geez, it's not blown up. Can you see my UV editor? You should be able to. Cool. So this is a hot mess right now, but what we're gonna do is first camera based all these stuff out here. And what I like to do is I take this face, make it its own UV island, this face, and then cut a seam. Unfold all of that. It's actually, jeez, that is way too small. Let's get this. Okay, cool. And then we're going to assign this to our little dude. To kind of straighten it out, shrink it down a little bit. And this is when I actually like to change my lighting mode to flat lighting and kind of put it on that little stem gradient that we made. And so at this point, if you kind of turn off the outline, you're kind of getting like a hint of like what your hand painted little flower guy is going to start to look like. And it's at this point that you can kind of manipulate the gradient. Like let's say like, ugh, that pink looks awful. I absolutely hate it. So you can shrink your UVs down. And now it's just in the green. But I kind of like it. So I'm going to keep it kind of stretched out like that. And then you can actually go in if you wanted and manipulate the verts to kind of change the gradient. I kind of want a bit more. Yeah, that looks cool. Okay, cool. So we got that little guy. And now let's minimize all this. So now we're going to make the shape for the petal. So let's start with this. So I subdivide it a little bit. Because that's kind of what helps me, well, obviously make the shape for the leaf. Because it's not just flat. It actually has volume to it. Usually I try to create this line like wherever the little like stem cut is. This one's a little off center though. So we're just gonna kind of fake it. So kind of bring this one up a little bit. I'm being really low poly about this, by the way. You can subdivide it a lot more than this, but this is just, that's just kind of how I work. And then I kind of grab these faces and sort of manipulate them into like, I'd call it like the inverse boat sort of looking shape. So cool. So then from there, I'm going to adjust the pivot to the centerpiece. Double click in here, drag it off screen, brings up this tool settings. And I reset the tool, kind of resets the pivot. I just kind of like leave this right here because I use that a lot. And then from here, I can like go in and actually start to build my flower. I'm going to do the same thing for this guy. Go subdivide this one just a little bit more. Pivot. Okay, cool. So we got this little fun guy. So it's actually at this point that I'd probably make the shape of the flower itself. And with these kind of like rosy peony guys, what I like to do is kind of get them like this. They're kind of like, I want to say this is completely up and then this is like down. And then start to kind of make the little circle around. Make another one. Actually, up back here. Make this one a little smaller. point, it's just a lot of adjusting. The more you go inward, the smaller you're going to want to make the petals. That's not only realistic to most flowers, but also you're going to have a hard time if you're trying to cram all these petals in here. So cool. Kind of have like see a little flower guy going on. At this point, I'd definitely make some adjustments, probably add some more petals, adjust these ones, but you get the idea. Got a flower. So I'm just going to, actually before I do that, drag this guy out, combine this guy. And then instead of doing the same exact thing over here, I'm going to just kind of take the UV already made. Where the heck? There we go. Rotate it, slide it over here. Way we saved ourselves some time doing that. And then with this particular guy, this one is like the flower is like starting to bloom, but not really yet. So it's like a closed little dude. Yeah, something like that. I'd probably go in and make another layer inside, but you kind of get the idea. Combine all that, reset it, make it really tiny. And yeah, that's just about it. I'd probably make like little actual stem things to kind of like, allude to the fact that they're just not sitting on the main stem because that's not realistic, but we're running out of time and I want time for questions. So yeah, that's more or less how you make a little hand painted flower guy. Of course. Yeah, sweet. I love this is why I love I love flowers, man. So, yeah, it's basically just kind of practicing this over and over and kind of figuring out like how to paint in Photoshop. That's the hardest part, really. And it's really like it's not as complicated as it might seem to be. So, and you don't really need to know anything fancy to make cool looking flowers. So, hmm right. So I didn't get to it in this video. I definitely want to go through it in the next video just because Unreal shader stuff. But so basically, how to do that is you'd go under mesh display to set vertex normal and go to this little guy. And see, I already have it like as default, but you change, these should all be set to like 0 once you pop in here. You change your Y to 1, which basically is going to set your normals straight up. And the reason why, at least that I do that, is the particular kind of shader setup that I use, at least for most hand painted and PBR stuffs, it creates an effect on your flower where light, yes, does affect it. However, it's kind of all softened. Basically, what you kind of see in here is more or less what you get, because otherwise, if you don't do this, you're all of the shadows on your flower just look really, really wrong. So you're kind of just faking this softening effect. And within the shader, which we'll go over next time, I'm no shader whiz, so I believe it's under subsurface. It's either subsurface or I think it's actually specular. I get the two confused all the time. But we actually plug in specular, which kind of controls the tint and strength of your shadows instead. So yeah, that's kind of my explanation of that. It just softens the shadows and makes them look right for this particular style of foliage stuff. Otherwise, if you don't do that, things just look really, really weird. But yeah, we'll get more into it next time. Mm-hmm.